Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for what will be another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying the show, do me a quick favor. Leave us that 5-star rating and review, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, today we're going to be talking to Yakov Smart. Yakov Smart is considered to be the leading expert when it comes to attracting A-list investors and raising capitals using LinkedIn. He's the author of Disrupting LinkedIn and sought after authority by top business owners and sales leaders worldwide. Yakov has shared the stage with Samantha DeBonchi of Bravo's hit TV show, $1 Million Listing, and he's been a guest on numerous media outlets. Let's welcome to the show, Yakov Smart.
Hi, John. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Yakov, listen, I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take a minute and give us a little bit more context of your background?
Absolutely. So today I know we're going to be talking about using online media, more specifically using LinkedIn in terms of attracting investors and raising more capital. So I'll talk a little bit about my background in that context as well. I mean, I've been marketing online and on social media pretty much for as long as I can remember. And I'm someone who was fortunate enough to grow up in the world of social media. So I got my start online. I had my first online business project back as a college student when I decided I was going to write a book for people on how to succeed in college. And that was really my first, dabble into the world of online and internet marketing. And since then, I've worked on a lot of various projects. I've built a multiple six-figure business specifically focused on LinkedIn and social media strategies. And I used to work with a number of different business owners in a number of different industries, showing them how to attract quality leads and really giving them a new way of using LinkedIn. And you had mentioned disrupting LinkedIn. That was sort of the perspective there, which I'm sure we'll be getting into more on today's show. But quite recently, after having a lot of influencers in the multifamily and real estate entrepreneur space reach out to me, I realized what an opportunity there was for attracting high net worth investors using LinkedIn and using online media, especially today. The time that we're talking, the world has changed. It's arguably more virtual than it's ever been. And I don't see that trend slowing down. So right now, these specific methodologies, these systems, these strategies that we're going to talk about, and my core focus is working with real estate entrepreneurs, whether it's people who are just starting out when it comes to raising capital and attracting investors, or people who have already raised tens of millions of dollars and are looking for another lead source for finding the investors they're looking for.
No, listen, that's amazing background as far as being able to help so many investors, so many other entrepreneurs, even starting out going back to your college days, really trying to help other people learn how to make the most of those experiences and opportunities. And, you talked about really starting off kind of in the online space as far as knowing what's happening there, how to connect with people. I know you also specialize in things like webinars, on-demand training, and so many other aspects of it. As you start to look at where the world is today and where it's heading with kind of this push towards virtual learning, virtual connections, where do you see some of these different platforms kind of playing a role? I mean, we talked about webinars, social media, and so many other digital components. How do they all stack up as far as where some of those opportunities lie?
Well, I'll give you the way that I look at it, right? I look at it in a very streamlined way. I think it's very easy to see the dozens of different channels out there, the dozens of things you could be doing, and to pretty much do nothing because there's so much to learn and do, especially if you're someone who's a little more old school. You like doing deals in person, you like meeting with people in person, and now that's not quite available like it used to be. So where I see it going is it's becoming an absolute must. I also think, we've reached sort of a tipping point where high net worth individuals, their comfort level of investing with someone they haven't met in person is going to get higher and higher. I mean, you look at some of these crowdsourced companies or REITs that have raised literally billions of dollars. They've done it primarily through online marketing and advertising. So I see that trend continuing to go up. I see it continuing to increase. And I see the barrier to entry being lower than it's ever been, which can be a really good thing. Now, at the same time, what you have to understand is there's also going to be a higher level of discernment than there's ever been, right? With the changing world, changing economy, a lot of people are looking for alternatives to investing in places like the stock market. So I continue to be a proponent of education first type of marketing, right? Educating people first. The people who are going to win in this virtual age, or who really are going to double down and win online, are people like yourself, John, who are proponents of educating people first, meeting people where they're at, addressing them not on the features and benefits of why your deal is the best thing since sliced bread, but first understanding them, helping them feel seen, and leading with great educational content that raises their level of awareness. That's what's been winning online. That's what's going to continue to win online on places like LinkedIn, especially.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, right? I mean, as the world evolves, and we've talked a lot about this, I think COVID really accelerated things that were already in the works. When you talk about, things being virtual, you talk about demand for, you know, or kind of the online platforms, everything from shopping and Amazon and, people shopping online to people getting more and more comfortable doing business online to people working remotely. I think all it did was really accelerate that and get people more comfortable because things were already slowly heading in that direction. And when it comes to investing, I think that's the same thing. You start to see more and more crowdsourced platforms, online platforms where people are looking to not necessarily sit down with an individual, sit across from them on a desk, learn exactly everything it is about their business and what they do, and look them in the eye. And certainly there's still a place for that, but people are getting more and more comfortable doing business online. So I think as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as investors, we have to become more comfortable with that. And we have to get in front of it and understanding what it takes now to serve that audience. And content is what you started to talk about. Educating this audience, serving them with the information they're looking for is really one of the best ways to engage with them. Get people comfortable, understand what challenges they face, understand what pain points they have in their lives, in their business, in their daily lives, and what can you do to serve them to help them overcome those challenges and be the solution for their problem. So as you think about content and as we talk about those different channels, whether it be a webinar or social media post or whatever, as you look at the challenges that many people have, how do you start to go about figuring out what's the appropriate channel? Also, do you create kind of an overarching approach to say, hey, look, here are the top three challenges that our target audience is facing, and here's the kind of content we're going to create. What's your approach there?
I'll give you my modus operandi, and this is especially going to be relevant for real estate entrepreneurs who may not necessarily consider themselves to be marketers first. I know a lot of people listening to this, they love doing deals, they love real estate, they love getting into the nitty and gritty. They don't necessarily love marketing, and guess what? That's okay. Right? You can still market very effectively without necessarily loving it. So my perspective on it is you only need 2 or 3 really good lead sources online. 2 or 3. Okay, having one, you're a little limited, even if it's the best lead source in the world, but 2 or 3 really solid lead sources that run largely on autopilot that you can use for generating quality investor leads. Okay, everything else is just icing on the cake. Everything else tends to be a shiny object. So when it comes to content, a lot of, I don't know where people get this from, but I think there's people talking about this still. The old school of thought was, well, to be effectively marketing on social media, let's say like LinkedIn or even Facebook, you need to be posting 5 times a day. And when people hear that, they want to run the other way because they're busy as it is. They don't, first of all, coming up with what to say, but also the time that it would take to post 5 times a day. And I want to let you know that that's an absolute myth. I mean, you can directly generate leads on LinkedIn and social media without posting at all. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, there is a way to do it without posting at all, where it's a more direct way of lead generation. I happen to prefer that way personally, and I know a lot of people listening will prefer that way too. So a couple of other issues that I see real estate entrepreneurs running into, and I'll give you some solutions for these as well, along with a couple of things to think about. First issue is that shiny object syndrome, trying to use every platform available to generate leads. It's just not sustainable unless you've got a huge marketing team. And even then, You need 2 or 3 really good lead sources, double down on those and make those work for you. The second piece is they try to do things too manually, okay? Understand that automation is in fact available. If you're not an expert in automation, you can work with someone who is. And frankly, if you understand the big picture vision, knowing what buttons to push, that's mechanical. That stuff can be outsourced or delegated, and for not a lot of money usually. It's more about having a strategic approach so you know what your strategy is going to be, so you know what your specific tactics are going to be. The third area of struggle is people don't know themselves. They don't know their strengths, or maybe they do. I think everyone already has an idea. However, they don't apply those in their communication style online. They don't apply those in their marketing. For example, John, you seem to be very good at podcasting. You've got a good flow. You ask good questions. And I'm sure the podcast has been very successful for you, which is why I continue to do it. But I know there's a lot of people out there who are probably listening, and maybe they're just getting started and they're looking for investors and they're saying, man, I don't know if I can do a podcast like John. I mean, I've heard podcasting is a good idea. You don't need to do a podcast. You can attract all the investors you need and raise all the capital you need without doing a podcast. John happens to be good at it, and it's in alignment with John, which is why this show is as good as it is. So, it's understanding that unique investor attraction DNA. And, it's frustrated me oftentimes working with people when, we've done a VIP day or they've asked me a specific question and they want to implement these 5 things that, first of all, won't directly move them towards raising the capital they're looking for, but secondly, just aren't aligned with them and are a giant should. And that usually doesn't lead to good things. So, that's why I created this concept of investor attraction DNA that we use along with marketing on LinkedIn, that comes down to understanding who you are in 4 core areas. That's level number 1. The second level of that is understanding who your ideal investor is in a few core areas, right? And really going deep on that. And then the third level is merging them together and merging them with some of the other, what we call key ingredients online. So that's really the winning recipe to look for. The fourth kind of big, and I'll give you one more after this too, because I know we've got a lot of directions we can go here. The fourth kind of, area where I see a lot of people get hung up on is not knowing what to post, right? And this is part of investor attraction DNA, is either being a creator or a syndicator, seeing where you fall on that spectrum. And what I mean by that, some people can wake up in the morning, get in front of their computer, get in front of their camera, and they've got 1,000,001 ideas for content. That's just who they are. It's a really cool strength to have. Other people can sit there for hours and not come up with a single thing. However, they happen to be very good at analyzing others' content or syndicating others' content and drawing critical inferences. So knowing where you are in that spectrum is really important, because not everyone should be making their own unique content. And some people need to be telling stories in their content. Some people need to be putting out infographics and detailed reports, right? It just depends on who you are. So, coming up with what to post, I'd rather you start slowly and consistently than, burn yourself out trying to post 5 times a day. And the other sort of hack to this thing, and I call it 3x3x3. And we talk about it on LinkedIn, but it also works on a place like Facebook, for example. So here's how 3x3x3 works, okay? Instead of you coming up with what to post every day and sometimes driving yourself crazy if that's just not you, or if your team, for whatever reason you don't want to do that, but you still want to get some of the benefits of posting consistently on a place like LinkedIn, for example, here's what you need to do. Take 3 minutes every day, 3 minutes. You can probably do it even faster. 3 minutes, and look on different posts in your LinkedIn newsfeed. Look on what's trending in the LinkedIn news forums, and do this with 3 posts that are relevant towards your, let's call it subject matter, right? So let's say it's multifamily. If you find 3 posts that are relevant to your subject matter, you give each of those posts a like, okay? But you don't just stop at that. You give them a comment and you ask a question. So for example, there's a post about something that's indirectly related, the stock market being more volatile than ever. You would give that post a like in the thread. You would comment on that post. And first of all, and the way to do that is you acknowledge the post. So a really insightful post, and then ask a quick question around it and get people a chance to chime in. It puts you out there, it increases your visibility, it improves your expertise, and you didn't have to post a thing. So it's called 3x3x3. It's one of those tactical things people can go do.
No, I love it. Listen, you just gave us, a fire hose worth of content and information right there. So I'm gonna try to break it down a little bit, and I do have a few follow up questions. First and foremost, the first point you made, I think, is so spot on. Okay, just understanding there is this thing where it's the shiny object syndrome. We're being told that you need to be a thought leader if you want to attract capital, if you want to raise money for deal. Folks are trying to be experts on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, and don't forget TikTok now. And there's so many social platforms. Then there's creating content for YouTube and Facebook video and podcast. And I mean, there's so many different ways to go. I haven't even mentioned blogging yet, right? So there's so many ways that we can create content that it can be overbearing, especially if you yourself don't see yourself as a marketer or a creative person or someone who is at the forefront of creating this kind of content. It can be completely overwhelming for you. So I love the fact that you start by saying you don't need to be on all of these different platforms. Pick 2 to 3 platforms. Get really good at those 2 to 3 and focus on standing out, creating great content, and serving your audience on those platforms. So, first and foremost, I think that is a very powerful insight. The second thing that you said that was really strong and very informative is that there is this myth that quantity is the most important thing, that posting 5 times a day is the most important thing. So you can post all these different times and eventually it catches on. Now, I'm sure the algorithms like quantity. If you're posting, I'm certain that quantity helps, but actually posting good stuff and driving engagement works really well. And as you talked about, sometimes it's not about just posting, but LinkedIn in particular, and we'll come back around to LinkedIn, but LinkedIn in particular is a platform where you don't have to make it by posting. And I would say the same with Facebook. You can leverage both platforms for the private messaging applications and just reaching out directly to a connection as opposed to trying to make a blanket post and hoping it reaches, the masses. So there are ways to leverage the functionality of these social media platforms that create a one-on-one dialogue and allow you to share and exchange more information about you, your business, what you do, how you help people. That can be very beneficial than just simply trying to come up with these different posts throughout the day. Now, if you do want to do those posts, you gave a great insight with that 3 by 3 by 3, going in, looking at the trending topics, looking at the post in your feed, and finding at least 3 posts, like it, comment on it, and ask a question in your comment. That's a great way to drive engagement and get your name out there. I'm going to come back to I think it were 4 things you mentioned, right? You said who you are, who is your investor, how do you merge those 2 things together? And then I believe the 4th thing that you said was about what to post, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that approach, right? So figuring out who you are, who is your investor, and how do you merge that together? Can you just explain a little bit? Because I know that's a place where some folks may get tripped up in trying to identify what they want to communicate, what they want, what their audience actually wants to hear. How do you actually go about that process to determine what about yourself you want to communicate and how that will resonate with your intended audience?
Yeah, so that's a great message. I'll give you the easiest way to answer that is to look at what the different combinations in investor attraction DNA. And at the time we're having this conversation, I've got the assessment. I've been beta testing it with private clients, and it's getting really good results. So I'll give you a sneak peek into it because I think it's something that's going to be much more mainstream over the coming months and probably years as well. So think of it as having a unique combination that when you unlock this combination, it's like your key to the vault of how to market and communicate with the investors you're wanting to attract. Okay. So the first category, you're either a C or an S, okay, a creator or a syndicator. Okay. So a creator, you're one of those people who really thrives on being creative and creating content, and creativity is a big thing for you. Okay. Syndicator, you're someone who's usually a little more analytical. You'd prefer to syndicate content from others and share some of your inferences on that. It's much easier for you to do than creating your own stuff. You don't necessarily want to go about creating a personal brand as much as just establishing expertise and sort of, providing the analytics. And, that's your best way to show expertise. Okay. So that's the first area. Second area, either a B or a P. Okay. banterer or a presenter. Okay, so a banterer is someone who's more, and when I think of these people, I think of someone who's great having one-on-one conversations. Okay, and I know that's a lot of real estate entrepreneurs where you don't need to necessarily be doing a lot of mass marketing. If you just get someone on the phone or on a one-on-one Zoom call, really good things are going to happen. Okay, and banterers are usually very good at strategic partnerships. They're usually not really keen on thinking that they're reaching, let's say, thousands of people at a time. That sort of is a little flustering to people who are more bees than peas. And they're also usually not big fans of group presentations or even talking to the camera and not talking with anyone, right? So that's the banterer. On the other side of the spectrum is more of the presenter, and this person's more of an asynchronous communicator. What that means is instead of one-on-one, they prefer to communicate one-to-many, even if it's not in real time. Okay, so people who would rather email back and forth a little, or communicate in Messenger before getting on a call. Right? There's some people who would rather pick up the phone and get on a call if they've got a question for every little thing. There's other people who don't want to talk on the phone at all. They're more comfortable doing group presentations or creating content that reaches people at scale. Okay, so that's more of a presenter. That's more of a P. So either a B or a P. The next category is J or an L. So a jogger or a leaper. Okay, and actually, it's in reverse, but for our conversation here, I'll explain both. So the leaper is someone who's more straight to the point, more of a bottom line type of communicator. And typically, your natural way to communicate, you don't want to tell people a million and one things about yourself, right? Things about your family, your hobbies. You prefer not to communicate that. You prefer to get to the point, and you usually prefer for others to get to the point as well. You don't need to know 15 things about someone to make a decision to do business with them or not. Versus someone who's more of a jogger is someone who's much more of a nurturer, someone who's a little slower in building relationships, someone who likes to know the fine details. And these are the kind of people who it's important for them to be seen as someone that you'd want to invite to dinner. Okay, or it's important for them to do business with someone who they might want to invite to dinner. Usually that's a litmus test for them. So someone who's a little more, before getting to the bottom line, they need more relationship first. And the way that they communicate, is usually more relationship first. They'll share more personal details, want to have longer type of conversations. Okay. Then the last category is you've got advisor and you've got author. So an A or a U. Okay. So the advisor is someone you really thrive in demonstrating your expertise when someone asks you a question, when there's a specific situation for you to look at or analyze. Okay. You're very good at those specific situations, those nuances, and advising in that role. That's your strong suit for conveying information. That's when you're at your most persuasive, and that's where you're best. Versus an author, it goes back to being more of that creator. Most authors are Cs, but also you're someone who's just always wants to put new things out there, and you've got a lot to say. And rather than talking about specific situations, you love sharing those big picture kind of concepts. Okay, that's more of an author, right? These are the people who usually write books or create video series or podcasts. They usually fit into that mold. So that's the first level, is understanding who you are, right? There's 16 possible combinations, and really understanding what your unique combination is. The second level is, and I know in marketing, some people have heard it, some people roll their eyes when they hear this, but I'll explain a little differently. Find your avatar, right? And I've heard that a million and one times, and like whenever I hear, there we go again, right? Another useless thing that people are going to do and get nothing out of. So I don't want you to find your avatar. I want you to think of up to 3 different types of people who are ideal investors for you. And I don't want you to just think about, where does this person probably live? What do they probably do for a living? Yeah, that stuff is nice. You want to know that kind of stuff. What's their age? Yeah, that stuff is nice. But I want you to think about where they're at in the decision-making process when it comes to your investment opportunity. So let's say you're doing a syndication and your ideal investor is someone who's a project manager at a firm, like Boeing, for example. Right? Project manager, they're earning a salary of $150,000 a year. They've been at that company for 15 years. They've got some money saved up for retirement. They're getting a little flustered by the stock market. Let's say it's that person, right? You want to think about things like, do they know what a syndication is, right? Where are they starting at in their level of awareness? A lot of people who aren't in the world of real estate entrepreneurship think that investing in real estate means being the landlord, going there on weekends, doing fix and flips. They don't know that they can passively invest and get checks in the mail, right? And they don't know, or they think that they need to have at least $5 million to invest, right? Or they think that they need to have X, Y, and Z when it's not really true. So you want to start educating them where they're at, and your messaging needs to meet them where they're at. Okay. And also, what are those emotional buttons? What are those things they really care about? Because unless you have that relevancy, they don't care about the nuts and bolts just yet. They don't care about the numbers right away. That it needs to be relevant to them first. And you have to understand, when you meet someone online, one of the best ways to develop that trust is to educate them with what's relevant. Because if you don't, if you go right in, being needy or pitching right away or being, too direct. First of all, there's SEC regulations. You don't want to tell them about a deal. That would just be a dumb thing. But if you don't build that trust first, understand here, and I like to tell people this too, the big difference between online and offline, if you meet that person, for example, at an REI meeting, okay, first of all, why they're there, those different types of things. But if they don't like what you have to say, or if they find it boring, or if they know it's not for them, or they just don't like the way your hair looks, they're probably, unless they're just a really rude person, they're probably still going to listen to you. They're not just going to go like this, turn their shoulder, and run the other way as quickly as possible. That would just be strange, and that would defy social norms. They'll give you the time of day, and maybe you'll say something that's really going to, ring a button with them, and they'll be interested. Versus online, split-second decision. If it's not relevant, next. There's a million and one distractions out there as well. So it's important to be more concise in your messaging and in building trust. And the best way to do that, one of the best ways to do that, if you just factor in some of the things that we talked about, it's a good way for getting started.
Yeah, you just gave some powerful insights, man. I want to play it backwards because, we talk a lot about the avatar. Even in my coaching program, I talk to my clients about that. And I want to just really hit on the point that you gave. And I hope people listening understood it, but it's a really powerful insight. And a lot of times we think about the demographics of our avatar, where they live, where they work, how much money they make, whether or not they have kids. And those things are certainly important for context. But you hit on, where are they in regards to investing with you? What questions do they have? What do they know? Do they even know what a multifamily syndication is? Do they even know that your product exists or your service, even taking this outside of real estate? Do they know about you? Do they know the differences between what you do versus someone else similar? So what do they actually know about your product or service and the benefits of working with you? First and foremost, you got to be really clear on that and clearly communicate that. And then the other piece that you hit on there is, what are they trying to solve? What are their problems? What are their pain points? What do they care about? You talking to somebody about a 16% IRR or having low debt on a property, they don't care. They don't even know what those things mean necessarily. They don't care. They don't know what it means. You haven't hooked them yet. So you really have to talk their language, understand what it is they're looking for, and then you can start to engage. And in the online space, they can easily just hit the delete button or walk away from your message. They can exit out of your website or walk away from anything that you're offering, versus in person, obviously, you can capture their attention a little bit longer. So you really need to be mindful of who you're serving and what they're looking for in these conversations. Being more concise, making sure that you build trust, and really hooking that end user to make sure that you bring them along for the journey. I want to go back to the who you are, because you did an excellent job of laying out those 16 different combinations. The first was, are you a creator or a syndicator? Are you a banterer or a presenter? Are you a jogger or a leaper? And are you an advisor or an author? And just thinking about where your comfort level is, how you like to bring information together, that may make it easier on how you develop content and actually talk to potential investors. I want to fast forward and start talking a little bit more about LinkedIn. Okay. So LinkedIn specifically is an area that you have absolutely thrived. Even as we were talking about, that 3x3x3 technique that you employ. One of the things that I know about LinkedIn that's different from some of the other social media platforms is LinkedIn allows you to have kind of a tagline underneath your name. So I can put John Kasman, I help professionals invest passively in apartments or something like that. And every time I post, my name is there, but that little tagline is right there underneath it. So that's a way for people to understand what I do for them. I know that's a tip that you share with your audience as well. But maybe you can explain a little bit more about some of the idiosyncrasies of LinkedIn and where some of those opportunities actually lie for those folks who see it just as a resume website, right? Just a place to go get a job. So I know a lot of people don't use LinkedIn or a little turned off by it. It's not fun. Doesn't feel like it actually grabs their attention. Tell me about the way you see LinkedIn and where some of those advantageous opportunities lie in comparison to some of the other social media platforms.
I'll start off by saying this. It's one of the best and most scalable lead sources for attracting really high net worth, high quality investors out there. It's also one of the most underutilized and undersaturated in terms of people who are actually using it effectively. So it's a massive opportunity. LinkedIn has changed a lot even in the past couple of years since Microsoft bought it. I mean, the average household income, this is average on LinkedIn, is $115,000. That's an average household income. So people on LinkedIn, it's a very different social media platform. I almost don't even categorize it with other social media because people are there for different reasons. They're there to learn, they're there to grow, they're there to build relationships. And you have an opportunity to capture attention there in a very unique way. So let me start by I'll give you the MADE method, the methodology that's inside our LinkedIn Capital Raising Accelerator program. I'll give you the high level, and then we can dive into some of the nuances and some of the tactics here as well. So the very first piece, right, is magnetizing your strategy for your list. Okay. So what that means is LinkedIn allows you to build hyper specific lists of high net worth potential investors within a matter of minutes. What's great about it is there's a few different ways to do it on LinkedIn, whether you're doing the free search, Sales Navigator, that's another topic we could certainly get into in a minute as well. So what you're able to do is literally within a matter of minutes, build a hyper targeted list on LinkedIn of pretty much any potential investor that you're looking for: dentists, doctors, lawyers, other real estate investors, hedge fund managers, people at family offices, tech founders, project managers, people in management consulting, tax advisors for strategic partnerships. I mean, there's so many different, and there's, I can think of at least 25 off the top of my head that, most people in our programs start with, but there's so many different ways to get specific as well. And what really a lot of people miss about list building is they try to build all these different lists and they don't get specific enough in their messaging. Okay, so when we say magnetize your entire approach on LinkedIn, you want to reverse engineer the outcome that you're looking for, just to book calls with potential investors, to get people on your investor list, and to find the people that are going to ultimately write you a check when you're raising capital for your next project. So you want to make it really specific to that type of person, and you really want to meet them where they're at. So what's great about building these lists on LinkedIn is you don't have to pay a list broker 2, 3, 4 grand for a list that you're going to have to scrub anyway as soon as you get it, right? The data is available in real time. It's the best data, as far as I'm concerned, anywhere in the world that you can have access to pretty much for free. And if you're using the premium account, for not a whole lot. Okay. So magnetizing your strategy based on your list. Second piece is accelerating trust based on your messaging. Okay. So when we talk about messaging, there's 3 important places to have really good messaging on LinkedIn that make all the difference in the world. The first one, John, you mentioned your LinkedIn profile. Okay. Other than your website, as far as I'm concerned, your LinkedIn profile is your most important online marketing asset. Even if your ideal investor isn't on LinkedIn for whatever reason, right? Where someone's looking you up, someone's Googling your name, okay? That LinkedIn profile, chances are it's going to come as one of the first searches, okay? So it's a big, big positioning piece. If you do nothing else, it's important to get that profile optimized and attractive to that ideal investor. And that's not just putting together a resume, it's actually putting together something that makes them feel seen and understood and moves them towards taking action. The second messaging piece that's really important on LinkedIn, we talked about this a little earlier, is the content that you're putting out there, right? So different types of content, what you're posting, that type of thing, getting more visibility, getting more relevance that way as well. And the third piece that's arguably, once you've got the profile honed in, is really a big part of the secret sauce, is accelerating trust through your direct messaging. So what you're able to do using LinkedIn, and something we could talk about for hours, but basically you're able to put together this lead generation machine where imagine you have a list of your most ideal potential investors that's really targeted, really specific. You've got a series of messages that you can use to nurture those people, to build those relationships and build trust using different automation softwares. You can plug in that list and start going out there and building those relationships on a daily basis and reach 100 people a day or more directly on their mobile devices, which is where most people check LinkedIn from, and start the conversation, get the right people to raise their hand and generate those investor leads. Now, direct messaging, there's a lot of methodology, a lot of strategy to accelerating trust that we can go into as well, because there's some nuances there. But what you're able to do is really fill the pipeline of potential investors using that approach, and the automation software takes care of 90% of the work for you. And then the final two pieces are delegating into a system you've developed. Okay, as a real estate entrepreneur, you don't want to be doing the day-to-day management. So the approach I recommend is, once you have good metrics, once you understand what's taking place, once the automation is running, for that other 10% that you have in either an intern or an admin person, because it's 15 to 20 minutes a day that you can take off your plate, and you delegate it to that person. So when we work with our students, a big thing is developing your instruction manual. Okay, something that someone can pretty much plug into, and you want it to be a well-oiled machine that runs pretty much on autopilot. And the final piece is enrolling more investors. So that's transitioning those conversations. Someone's raised their hand, they're interested, what to say, using different, I call them the 8 buckets of if-when scenarios, where when someone responds a certain way, how do you get that person to fill out the form on your website or book a call so that they wind up on your investor list and interested in investing with you?
No, I love it, man. You just gave some more powerful tips here, and I was just feverishly taking notes, man, just to make sure I could recap and stay on top of it. But you talk about all this really being about magnetizing your strategy, right, for your list, and a couple of things here to build out a hyper targeted list. You gave 5 specific things in our process to make sure we're doing that on LinkedIn. So the first is that LinkedIn profile, and you said something that was really great here. I mean, first of all, and anyone listening to this right now, if you don't believe them, Google your own name. Just Google your name and see if your LinkedIn profile comes up on that first page. For most people, it does, even above your Facebook profile. So you may spend way more time on Facebook, but that LinkedIn profile has much higher weight when it comes to Google search results. So if you're looking to do business with someone else, you want to make sure that that LinkedIn profile is optimized. And you pointed out that it's not just being optimized from a resume and experience standpoint, but that you're actually setting it up to appeal to the audience. And I believe you specifically said making sure that the audience finds the solution in that profile. So when they're looking at your profile, it should be optimized to see how you can help them, and not just about you and your experience and the companies that you've worked at, but they want to see right away how you help people like them. So that's a great way to optimize your profile. The second thing is making sure, obviously, the content you're putting out is compelling and engaging with the audience. The third one was really using direct messenger and using the direct messages to really engage with your potential investors. The fourth is creating a system that you can delegate. And then obviously the fifth one being to enroll more investors. So finding ways to set up calls, getting people on your investor list, and building it and growing it that way. As we talk about the profile, I think that is just spot on. And this is something that most people can do right now. When you look at LinkedIn profiles, what's the biggest mistake you see people making, whether you are a real estate investor or just, any business owner trying to do business on LinkedIn? What's the biggest mistake you see people making when it comes to their own LinkedIn profiles?
Well, so the mistake is twofold. The first part of the mistake is having it look like a resume and not appealing to that ideal investor. And the other part of that that's really tactical, that always baffles me that people don't do, is they don't fill in all the sections of their profile. And when I say fill in, there's about 5 different sections, maybe a few more you can fill in, but we're not talking about necessarily all your educational experience. The main sections we're talking about is your picture, having an updated picture, a cover photo, which a lot of people just don't have, a LinkedIn headline that, is what I'm talking about on the basic level is actually having something there. An about section, which a lot of people don't have either, an experience section actually filled in, which a lot of people don't have either, and featured content where you can backlink different things like your website, different places where you've been featured, other content as well. Just having those basics filled in and having the profile set to public. Just doing those things alone, if you don't have those things done, let alone done well, it limits your visibility on LinkedIn. It ruins a lot of your credibility online, and it doesn't position you in the way that you want to be positioned for accelerating trust. So, actually having those things filled in, I see so many people who either filled those in a number of years ago and, aren't aware that people are looking at their profile every day just from Googling their name. And if you don't even have those things filled in, let alone effectively, it's leaking potential lead and it's leaking potential capital that you could be raising.
No, those great tips there. So listen, at a minimum, add a picture to your LinkedIn profile, add in a tagline there, put a backdrop image or kind of your headline image, and make sure you're adding your experience. I mean, at a very minimum, make sure that as people are looking you up, getting more information on you, that you have something interesting to share with people so they can understand how you can help them. Are you ready to move on to our Bullseye Round?
I'm ready.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
That's a great question. So earlier this year, I was in Melbourne, Australia. Before the whole COVID thing happened, I did a live event, a seminar that did not go so well. And it made me realize that, live events were no longer aligned to me and I was going to be all online. And the COVID thing was just, the cherry on top. They didn't really have a choice. So it set me up to really get more focused and dial in my online marketing systems that much more.
Was there something specific in regards to the live event? Was it turnout or what was the challenge?
The turnout was good. The challenge that I later realized this was an international audience, so the psychology was a little different. The offer wasn't quite right. So this was one of those one-day events that was designed to enroll people in the other programs, and that part didn't go well. And the other thing is, the entire event for me, like energetically, was a should, right? Because I was traveling with my girlfriend. We were sort of on vacation, but I figured I should be working and generate some extra revenue. So it was a lot of work, a big investment of time, energy, and money. And it turned out to, it definitely was not a highlight, but hey, learned some things and, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
All right, give me a digital resource you recommend for your business.
Digital resource that I personally use or that I recommend people use?
Either or.
Let's see. So I want to keep it really practical. So if people are doing videos, there's a cool one called Zubtitle, Zubtitle. For very little, it'll actually transcribe the video using artificial intelligence.
Give me a book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
So I'll give you a couple, right? So a book that I typically recommend the most on mindset, Psycho-Cybernetics, is really good by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, timeless classic. Recently, though, one book, and if you can listen to it on Audible, I think you'll love it. 50 Cent, the rapper, he wrote a book called Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter, one of the best audiobooks I've listened to ever. It's really good. It's really insightful. If you know who that is and you've got a certain perception of him, it'll completely blow your mind. And there's some great perspective in that I think everyone can benefit from.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay let's say it again. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
So I meditate pretty much on a daily basis. That's a good one.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Oh man, where do I even start? That it's more simple than I thought. That sometimes, there's a lot of people out there and a lot of information out there. I mean, we only need the specific things that are most aligned to us, that are going to work for us. And, there's no sense in just trying to learn a lot when we need to figure out what it is that we can implement and double down and optimize what works.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm always curious about marketing and behavior. And, even better ways to optimize investor attraction DNA, to optimize messaging. And I'm also curious to see what's going to happen with the world and where virtualization is going to go next.
All right, I know that you are out in Scottsdale, Arizona. So give me the best place to grab a bite.
Best place to grab a bite, man. I mean, there are so many. I like Ocean Prime. It's one of those, I don't know if it's a franchise, but it's really nice. One of my favorites. And there's one place, I'll give you a bonus one too, that I haven't been to yet that I want to go to. It's got a Native American name. It's at the Sheraton Resort. It's not quite in Scottsdale. It's in Chandler, but it's supposed to be like one of the best restaurants in the world. And that's on my list whenever they open back up.
Awesome. Sounds like two really great places. Ocean Prime, they are a franchise, but they have I think a smaller number of restaurants, but definitely great food at Ocean Prime as well. Listen, Yakov, you've given us so much great information. Really appreciate how you talked about really leveraging the internet in general to identify leads and connect with potential clients, and then specifically talking about LinkedIn and how we can leverage LinkedIn better to really engage with investors, to find investors, and just knowing that you don't have to post 5 times a day to do this effectively. There's strategies that you can implement to be effective, to go direct to investors and use the direct messaging application, as well as automating some of these components. So if you want to learn more about ways to leverage LinkedIn, or learn a little bit more about, the program, the investor attraction DNA, or some of the other aspects that Yakov's shared, what is the best way for listeners and viewers to get in touch with you?
Well, they can add me on LinkedIn. They can also check out, there's an online training that covers the LinkedIn investor lead generation side, that much more specifically, linkedleads.us/raising capital webinar, linkedleads.us/raising capital webinar.
Listen, thank you again for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun and very informative. I appreciate your time today. Take care. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.